Our next conversation in the Energetic Leader podcast is with Kanishka Wickrama. For a CFO of one of Nepal's largest telecom companies, Kanishka is a surprisingly humble person. His path from a SAP consultant to that of a coveted role of CFO in a large organization is unconventional, to say the least, which, by the way, seems to be a recurring theme with our guest on this podcast. Kanishka might put down his success to luck or destiny, but if we dig into it, it's an easy conclusion to draw that those who put in the grit and the hard work get lucky more often than not, and Kanishka is very much in the former category. Among other things, he highlights the importance of working for a great boss and also balancing time in a demanding role with being present for his kids and his family. He also touched on the importance of having a value system, a belief system that you can adhere to help you filter out noise and focus on the tasks at hand. Again, another recurring theme that we've observed with our guests. As always, we had a lot of fun chatting with Kanishka, and we hope you get a lot of value out of it. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Kanishka Wickrama.
What was the very first professional gig you did?
Yeah, I think the very first professional gig is I was actually a software developer / programmer, and I think maybe you all can recall this was 2004. At that point, everyone wanted to be a programmer. Everyone wanted to be a software developer. So I was one of them who was dreaming to become a very successful developer. So yeah, I think that was my first gig where I got paid.
So that's a very, very interesting journey, isn't it? Going from a programming background to a chief financial officer. We'd love to explore the path and the decision points and some of the choices you made. And when you first started on this programming career, Kanishka, did you kind of have a vision as to where you would be? Did you sort of like have a certain trajectory in mind? I'm going to become a senior programmer and then become this and then become that kind of trajectory, or is it kind of worked out in a natural, unexpected way?
Yeah, I think if you can recall, maybe like in 2000s, there was this, especially in Sri Lanka or that part of the world, there was this craze which was going on where loads and loads of people were getting into information technology, trying to become developers, going abroad to study programming and things like that. So somewhere in 2000, I was also dreaming of becoming a big field per se, to become an IT guy, so I think that time there was no very major specific role that I had. It's mainly that I wanted to be a kind of a cool IT guy. At that point in time, there was no major vision per se.
Uh-huh. And this was for the first few years of your career, or first couple of years before I guess you had more clarity on which direction you wanted to go? Or how long did you go down that path before you thought,
now you're really taxing my brain. This is exactly about 17, 18 years ago. So I think I was working as a software. I was purely doing IT technology kind of related stuff for the first 5, 6, or even I would say to 7 to 8 years easily in different fields. I was a software developer once. I was at one point, then I was a SAP consultant doing SAP implementations.
And still at this point,
I was working for Dialog.
And finance hasn't entered the picture still at this point. Like, we're still only technology focused, very much.
Correct. Yeah, so pretty much. And I think one thing that I can remember very well is that when I got into SAP, that time I was pretty sure I want to become a very good SAP consultant. we were working with the SAP consultants from companies like IBM and Accenture at that point in time for some of the projects that we were doing in Sri Lanka. So, and some of them were like very senior, quite good SAP consultants. So that time I can remember that I wanted to be a good SAP consultant. So that I can remember very well, that that is kind of a dream that I had at that point in time.
And then at some point, something happened along the way, which made you pivot just a little bit, turn towards finance. Now, whether it was through work or whether it was deliberate or by chance, or I mean, you're CFO at the moment. Now, people who study finance dream, set out on that path for many, many years before they even get close to it. And you're someone who studied technology and worked in technology for the first 5-7 years of your life, and then got onto this accelerated path. And that's the bit would be really interested in exploring a bit further. For someone who admits that their only interest was SAP and being a really good SAP consultant and a cool IT software developer, at what point does the light bulb go on that, finance is not just something I need to become a good IT consultant, but it's going to become my primary area of focus? So,
yeah, I think it's a very interesting journey, and I think there are a couple of incidents that happened which paved the path to get into finance. I think the first one was that I realized being a SAP consultant, especially the finance, that time we used to call it a FICO consultant. So then after that, I realized that a good FICO consultant doesn't mean you need only the SAP knowledge, that you have to have a fundamental finance knowledge. Like when you are talking to your client, you should be able to understand when they're saying about the P&L statement, balance sheet, debit and credit, the concepts. Actually, you have to know the fundamentals. So I started studying finance in the first place. Is to supplement what I was doing in SAP, because I wanted to get that knowledge. And then there were a couple of SAP consultants that I came across. They told that actually primarily they are chartered accountants, and then they learned SAP. So they started being like, maybe they never practiced accountancy, but they are fully qualified accountants. But then they started practicing SAP. So that's why I thought, okay, good, that I think I need to have that educational background. I need to have that fundamental. So that's how I started studying finance in that point in time. And then what happened is that I don't know whether you call it luck or destiny. I was posted to look after SAP in Cambodia. That time Axiata was called Telecom Malaysia International. And then they had an investment in Cambodia called Telecom Malaysia International Cambodia. A very small operation, if I can recall. This was 2009-10, maybe $40 million in revenue, marginally profitable. So I was looking after the SAP. It was we did the implementation there. Then I was looking after the SAP setup there, and then out of the blue, one day, the chief financial officer in the company in Cambodia at that time asked from me, if you are financially, if you're qualified, what are you doing being looking after SAP? Why don't you consider a full-time finance job? Then I said, I never thought of it, but yeah, I think if I get the chance, I think I can do that.
Right.
And then he all of a sudden offered me, okay, the financial controller position of the company is coming up. I want you to take it and see whether you can take up the challenge or not.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, okay, I'll take it. So then, boom, all of a sudden, I think beginning of 2011, I completely gave up my SAP role and moved and took on the role of the financial controller. of the company in Cambodia at that time. So that is how the shift happened from IT, SAP to finance.
That in itself is a pretty big. It's a pretty big jump. Like financial controller, it's a massive responsibility. How did you? What was your first 6 months or first 12 months in a completely new role, which is not what your expertise was for the past few years? How did that go, or what were the challenges, and how did you?
Yeah, I think the first 6 months was pretty much challenging, I would say, because I think I had to kind of like that I have learned up to that point in terms of SAP and IT and start learning everything again. And at the same time, like whatever from finance and accountancy, what I have studied, I had to start applying them on the job. So for 6 months, it took a lot of effort to get used to the monthly reporting standards. We were part of a public listed company at that time. So the monthly reporting was very important to be on a specific format. And we used to get PricewaterhouseCoopers as the auditors coming in every quarter to audit the books and things like that. So it was challenging. But I think one thing that I have to highlight is that even someone, if you are moving from one area to a complete new area, I think your boss, the role of your boss is very important.
Isn't it? Yeah.
That time, my boss, he told me that I know you are new, I know you are learning everything, so don't worry, I'm going to support you. Even there are things that we have to learn along the way, no problem, we can do that. So I think that was the most comforting factor, that knowing your boss is there to support you, rather than that, okay, there's someone waiting for you to fail, and then put somebody else in. So that was very comforting to know that actually, that support system is there, that for you to do your job.
Yeah, and so I must say, so Kanishka and I actually, we studied together in school, pretty much from grade 8. I'm pretty sure it was from grade 8 in the same class until the point we graduated from high school. And then, we did study commerce and finance in our junior high school era. Who would have known, with that background, Kanishka would become the person he is, heading up finance in a large corporation in the telecom space. So maybe I'll just pivot a bit from here and just ask, so you've gone through a number of different iterations and then came to the place where you are at the moment. What was the hardest lesson you had to learn in this transition or in this journey to date?
Good question. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that once you have your own kind of like your own values, your own belief system, and once you know that you are doing what is right, I think it's very important you stick by that. Sometimes, I think one mistake maybe that I did is that I'm doing that even now, but maybe at the beginning, is that sometimes we get carried away by the sound, by hearing different sound bites about you. You get carried away based on the opinions sometimes you hear from other people around you or outside the organization. So I think one thing still that I'm trying to do is that if I know that what I'm doing is right, and if I know that what I'm doing is the right thing for the organization, it doesn't matter what others think, or it doesn't matter what are the sound bites that are coming around you, as long as you know what you're doing is correct. So I think sometimes we tend to listen to opinions, we tend to listen to things like that, which sometimes we get carried away in different directions.
So that's an interesting thing. I would like to explore that a bit more. So you mentioned, as long as you know you are doing the right thing by the organization, you would pretty much carry that through. So what are some of the things you use? What's that internal compass like? How do you know that whatever you are deciding to do, thinking of doing is the right thing?
Okay. Good question. I think two things that I think it's I think even more important for a position like the chief financial officer. I think one is that I never compromise on integrity, and I never compromise on ethics. So as long as you know that whatever you are doing is based on the ethics, code of ethics of the company, then you cannot go wrong. The second thing is that, like, to be on a simpler terms, that sometimes people say, "Would your mother approve it?" Right? After you do something,
Yeah.
is your mother going to be proud of it? Right? So, like that, like.
That's fair, right? Yeah.
So you have to be correct. So you have to know that you are doing what is fair for the organization. That maybe it's not fair for some, maybe it's not fair for some of the people, but as long as you know you are doing what is fair for the organization and for the better interest of most of the organization, I think that is what is important.
Yeah. You spoke about having a very supportive boss when you made the transition. I'm sure there were lessons or ideas that you picked up from him that you brought into your own management style.
Yeah, I think one thing is what I just explained is that you always try to do what is right for the organization that you are working. And I think one thing that I learned, it's not directly from him, it's from the group CEO of Axiata at that point in time. He always tells the story of when he was working for HP at one point in time, that people around him was getting promoted and climbing the ladder, but he was kind of getting transferred to different roles at the same level, getting assigned into different projects. And then he explained how he looked at that also as part of development, where that he's getting exposure in different areas in the company, but it's not a promotion and climbing the ladder. I think that actually, I still believe in that, that the development doesn't come just by climbing the ladder. Sometimes developments or challenges comes from, let's say, taking a 6 months assignment, getting like nominate yourself for a project that you have never been involved before.
Yeah.
Or if you are in finance, maybe you are in accounting now, try to get a role in corporate finance, try to get into business planning and business finance.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that I learned, is that if you want to challenge yourself, there are multiple ways to do that. If you want to develop yourself, there are multiple ways to do that. It doesn't mean that you will be getting promotions all the time. It can come laterally as well. I think this is a very important lesson that I learned from our group CEO at that point in time.
That's actually fantastic. Maybe let's shift gears slightly and then do a bit of a time travel kind of thing.
Sure.
Right? Let's imagine Kanishka in 10 years' time. Where's Kanishka? What's Kanishka like?
Okay, I haven't actually thought what I'll be doing in 10 years' time. Okay, if I have to think, yeah, I think I would still assume I think I can see myself in two positions. I think one is that I'll be either a CFO of a bigger telecom company, or I think I'll be the CEO of a telecom company, not a large size telecom company, a smaller to medium telecom company. Not 10 years. I never think of what's going to happen in 10 years. Let's say in the next 5 years time frame. This is what I would think of where I'll be.
That's awesome. If you don't mind, maybe let me explore that thought a bit. How do you perceive time? As in, like, so sounds like you don't necessarily think of it in very, very long range time horizons. Is that necessarily right? How do you perceive time, plan for it, look at it, and then bring it to your advantage?
Yeah, I think I always look at, say, what I'm going to do in the next 2 years or maximum 3 years. Like, for example, I started as the CFO in Nepal in end of 2018. So it's 3 years now. So when I started in Nepal, I think kind of my thought pattern was that what I'm going to achieve in the next 3 years in terms of the organization, these are the things that I'll be completing by the end of 3 years. So kind of it's 2 to 3 years time frame, I think, and especially I think the telecommunication industry is moving quite fast, and it has become impossible for even like for us from a business point of view also to plan for the next 4 to 5 years. Like whatever we thought that was going to happen in the last 5 years has, I think, happened in the time frame of 2 to 3 years, and it's moving much faster. So it's very difficult to plan for a very long time period at this point in time.
Yeah. All right. Again, this will look like again, coming out of nowhere, but we'll just sort of throw questions as we think. So the idea of the podcast is obviously energetic leader. So you're a leader in your workplace, obviously, in your current role, but then also in your family. There is expectations of you to bring your best self day in and day out, and some of these things there is no sort of, you don't get time off. So it's now there must be like conscious decisions that you make or choices that you make or things that you plan for that ensure that day in and day out you are bringing your absolute most energetic self, because there's nothing worse than a leader that's not really inspiring. Or so keen to understand what are the things sort of that you what are the practices that you sort of take part in or think about or engage in to make sure that you bring sort of your best self to work, family, everything. Like this is not a strictly work environment. Again, this is every in your life. So
I think the biggest thing is that you should be doing what you really love at your workplace. If so far I have been fortunate enough to do what I really love in terms of my career. So I think if you the day that sometimes you can feel like, say, a day that you feel that, okay, today was not so good in terms of workplace, and you know that it's gonna impact when you go back home because you are not gonna be the best of yourself. So I think for me, the most important thing is that I have to do what I really love. Like when you wake up in the morning, you should be feeling excited to get to work, not that I need to snooze for another 15 minutes. So
I think how you wake up on a Monday morning says a lot about what you feel about work.
Exactly. So I think it's very important that you're doing what you love, and then it's very easy to keep up that energy and continue. Yeah. Otherwise, I think the moment you feel that it's not that what you're supposed to do and you're not enjoying, I think it's better to move on rather than trying to fit yourself into something that you're not.
And outside of work, family and everything else, and your hobbies and whatever else that you do outside of work, you have a similar...
a couple of things that outside work that I now try to do is that I try not to open my laptop on Saturday and Sunday. It's tough, but now I'm trying to make it a point that if I have to reply to something, I will try to do it from my phone rather than opening my laptop and getting into work. And then I think, and now I think after a while that you start to realize that simple things really makes a difference. Like like Saturday, I make it a point if I'm at home to go cycling with my elder son. 1 hour, even 1 hour cycling.
Yeah.
Then you grab a drink. You feel refreshed. You feel energetic. Or you say that Friday night is movie night, so you make it a point that you don't go out on Fridays. You will stay at home, make some popcorn, and watch movies with your kids, right? Or I would say Saturday's pizza night. I'll make pizza. So then the kids would gather around you and wait for you to do the pizza. So I think it is important that you start enjoying these things, and you look forward to doing that, right? Like, okay, you're looking forward for the Friday movie night. You're looking forward for the pizza night. You're looking forward to do some cycling. I think that's very important. Otherwise, it's not easy.
Absolutely, and it's so important to have, again, especially for leaders who are, at executive level, CXO level, just to have that balance that you're not just sort of focused on, you're not just the person who is a leader in the business in your workspace, but also in your family life.
That's correct. Yes.
Maybe if I can ask, what books, lessons, or situations or people have actually inspired you, gave you ideas? Are there any go-to books, go-to lessons, or role models that you look up to?
Okay, I think now when it comes to books and all, I think it is very funny that that structured way of reading books and magazine, for some reason, I think I don't do that anymore. Sometimes it's that some of your colleagues will send an article that was published in McKinsey when you are leaving office, and then by the time you get home, say it's a 30 minutes drive, you read that article in your phone.
Correct. Yeah.
Or somebody. Yeah. So I think I still do read books, but I think most of the business reading and things like that happens in my phone now. When I'm commuting, especially like you read a lot of stuff that way. And I think inspiration wise, I think I was fortunate enough to have quite a bit of good superiors where I managed to learn different values, I think, from them. So that has been quite good. And even now, when I need advices, I reach out to them. If I have, it can be both professionally, like it could be related to leadership skills, or it could be related to your functional skills as well. So I think it's important you need to have that kind of the peers and your superiors whom you can reach out to get clarity, to get some advice that you need. And I think the most important thing is that you have to be sure that they are willing to help you without having, how to say, sometimes you come across people that they are willing to help you, but then after that they'll be making a comment, oh, I'm not sure how come this guy doesn't even know this. So you have to be sure that you are surrounded by like-minded people who is the same phase that when they're talking to you and when you're not around as well.
Correct.
Yeah. So maybe let's move on to the last part of the segment, which is pretty much like a bit of rapid fire type questions. What we're really looking for is the first term or keyword or phrase that comes to your mind, just the first impression, the first gut reaction, and we'll pretty much tag team on this, Sunny. Yeah. So maybe it's like we call it fill in the blanks type of questions, right? So when things get really challenging,
When things get really challenging, I get more energized.
When I have to make a choice that will lead to short-term pain but long-term gain, I construct my thinking by
always looking at the end picture.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. So, yep, that makes sense.
Awesome. And when I know I don't, or I won't have all the facts to make an informed decision, what I do is
Talk to someone.
Not afraid to reach out to ask for help. Again, that's, ego can come into play so many times.
No. I think we have come to a level where it's too dangerous to get your ego get into the play.
Yeah.
Sometimes the decisions that we make might have far bigger consequences than your ego. So if you're not sure, always reach out to someone who has done this before and get their opinion.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I think
it's a good note to
absolutely, even for our sort of like fine tuning of our own approach. But no, that we had a fantastic time on this podcast. Kanishka, thank you very much for taking the time. And I think there's a lot all of us can learn from your journey, and that whole notion of being open to the ideas, being open to possibilities, always keeping a view of the bigger picture, and connecting with people, not letting your ego get in the way. Those are some of the universal advice all of us can actually benefit from. So we'd really like to take this opportunity to thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to connect with us and then have a conversation. And if it's okay, we'd love to connect with you again, down the track, just to explore some of your philosophies, principles, and experience a bit more. Sunny?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Push covered it really well. And not to be out of line, there is one thing I would like to add. And again, not to be out of line, given the history you've had, the path, the trajectory that you've taken, I wouldn't limit myself to thinking that you would be in telecom 5 years down the road. You could absolutely CEO, yes, but I think the world's your oyster. Like you've traveled countries, you've changed industries, you've changed functions. So who knows? And
that's true. True.
So let's see where the next 5 years take you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the insightful questions.